Picture this. You just closed on your brand new construction dream home for $800,000. Your first property tax bill arrives. It's $2,500 for the year. And you're thinking, wow, California taxes just aren't as brutal as everyone warned. But 6 months later, another bill shows up for $7,500. And no one mentioned this one was coming. Now, this scenario plays out across Southern California every day. And I'm about to show you exactly why it happens, when it happens, and how to see it coming from miles away. So if you're considering new construction in Southern California, this video could save you thousands in unexpected costs and months of financial stress. And I'll break down 3 hidden tax realities that blindside buyers. And I'm going to share real client stories with actual dollar amounts and give you specific questions that protect your wallet before you sign anything. So stay with me, because I'm also revealing why some neighborhoods add $400 or more in special taxes, while others just a few miles away add absolutely nothing. Plus, I'll show you the exact documents to request that reveal these costs up front. So I am Steve Enshin, your Southern California new construction home expert. Every week, I talk to folks just like you about the right way to buy a new construction home. Now, when you buy a new construction home, there's a fundamental timing disconnect between when you close escrow and when the county catches up with reality. And this creates what I call the assessment gap. And it's where most tax surprises originate. And here's how it works. So let's say you tour model homes in January, and we sign a contract in February while your home is still being framed, and then we close escrow, I don't know, maybe in June on a property that was just completed for you just a few weeks earlier. Now, meanwhile, the county assessor's office is working with data that could be maybe 6 months to a year old. So at closing, county records typically show only the empty lot value, because that's what existed during their last assessment cycle. So your initial tax bill reflects this outdated information, sometimes dramatically outdated. So the county then begins what's called a supplemental assessment to capture your home's actual value when it's sold. Now, this isn't a penalty, it's not a mistake, it's a legal requirement under California law. And every property must be reassessed when there's new construction or a change of ownership happens on an existing property. And this process takes, well, anywhere from 3 to 9 months to finish. And during this entire period, you're paying artificially low taxes based on this obsolete information. And the longer the delay, the bigger the eventual catch-up bill. So I had a client in Corona who bought for about $725,000 last summer. Their initial bill was based on a $165,000 land value from the previous year's assessment. So they paid $1,650 for their portion of the year, generally thinking, hey, they'd somehow discovered the one affordable corner of California. And the supplemental assessment hit them for $5,850 6 months later. And that's the difference between what they'd been paying and what they actually owed based on an ownership of a completed $725,000 home. So the mathematical reality is unavoidable. The gap between what you initially pay and what you actually owe creates that surprise bill. And California law mandates this catch-up payment. And there's no appealing it, there's no avoiding it once you understand this system. Now, California operates on a July 1st through June 30th fiscal year. And when you close escrow within this cycle, it determines how many supplemental bills you'll receive. And this timing element catches even experienced buyers off guard, because July through December closings typically generate one supplemental bill covering the remainder of that fiscal year. And the math is pretty straightforward. You pay for the months you owned the property at the new reassessed value. Now, January through May closings create what I call the double hit scenario. You get one bill for the current year's remainder, then another covering the entire upcoming fiscal year. And this happens because January's tax roll couldn't possibly reflect your completed home that didn't exist yet. So last spring, I had clients who closed on a Temecula home in March for about $690,000. So September brought their first supplemental bill for $4,200, covering March through June. Now, December delivered the second supplemental bill for $8,400, covering the full upcoming fiscal year from July through June. So that's like $12,600 in catch-up taxes beyond their regular annual bill. And this is money they legitimately owned, but they hadn't really budgeted for. These aren't errors. They're not penalties, and no, they're not optional payments. They're just prorated amounts based on your actual ownership period and your home's assessed value. So the supplemental bills also follow their own payment schedule. You can't defer them. You can't roll them into next year's regular bill. They become delinquent with penalties and interest, just like any other property tax obligation. Now, community facilities districts, they're universally known as Mello-Roos. They represent a completely separate tax system that funds infrastructure in developing areas. Now, when Proposition 13 capped traditional regular property tax increases way back in 1978, the local governments needed alternative funding mechanisms to pay for like new schools, roads, fire stations, and just like regular public safety services. So Mello-Roos taxes operate entirely independently from regular property taxes. They're not based on your home's value at all. Instead, they use formulas specified in something called the Rate and Method of Apportionment document. So these are calculations based on square footage, bedroom count, the lot size, even possibly be a flat rate per parcel. So the geographic kind of randomness of these districts creates really dramatic differences between neighboring communities. So for example, in Eastvale, I have clients who are paying $4,200 a year just on Mello-Roos on their $680,000 home. That's like $350 a month on top of regular property taxes. But you just drive a little bit south and west to Norco, and similar homes that are in established neighborhoods carry no Mello-Roos tax. Same school district, same services, same property values, but really completely different tax obligations. It's just based purely on when the communities were developed. So these districts last typically about 20 to 40 years, and it's essentially a bond repayment period for financing all this infrastructure that has to be built for these new communities. Now, some communities were established sort of recently, back in the 1990s. They're now beginning to see their Mello-Roos obligations expire. Now, the newer developments can often carry higher rates to fund some of the more recent infrastructure bonds. So I've seen Mello-Roos ranges from, $150 a month in some of the older districts nearing expiration to, in some cases, like $600 a month in some of the really premium new communities that have like a lot of amenities. So this variation is huge, and it's not necessarily correlated with home prices or the quality of the neighborhood. So understanding your specific district's history, the funding purposes, and the expiration timeline becomes really crucial for long-term financial planning. Now, a $400 monthly Mello-Roos assessment adds about $96,000 to your housing costs over 20 years. But now, I'm going to surprise you and say there's one good thing about Mello-Roos. Now, someone needs to pay for these infrastructure expenses. They're required by these new developments. So if a builder offers a community without a Mello-Roos assessment and infrastructure upgrades are needed, they're paying them and packaging the cost into the price of the home. But if the builder decides to opt for a Mello-Roos, or because the community is located in one of these districts, then the cost of these upgrades is not in the price of the home. And here's why this might matter. Property taxes increase every year, but according to the limits set in Proposition 13. But they start at your sales price and go up from there. So if you have these infrastructure costs embedded in the home price, and the tax is based on the home price and could increase each year, then you'll end up paying more over time versus a lower price home with a Mello-Roos assessment, because the Mello-Roos taxes never increase over time. They stay flat. So in theory, you could save money in the long run. Now, here's where the system creates a potential cash flow nightmare for unprepared homebuyers. Supplemental bills bypass your mortgage company entirely in most cases. So even with an escrow account diligently collecting monthly tax payments every month, these additional assessments come directly to your mailbox with your name on them. So your lender, if they're not careful, may calculate monthly escrow payments based on existing tax records available when the loan is originated. And then when supplemental assessments arrive months later, you're responsible for immediate payment while your escrow account just continues collecting based on outdated information. So the coordination process works like this. You receive the supplemental bill and pay it out of pocket within the required time frame. Then you contact your lender to report the new tax information. They recalculate your monthly payment to reflect the higher annual tax burden. And that's usually effective with the next payment cycle. So this creates a temporary, but a significant cash flow gap. And one client's monthly payment jumped from $3,200 to $3,650 after all of these tax adjustments were calculated into their escrow account. So they had to cover like a $6,000 supplemental bill immediately while waiting months for their monthly payment to rebalance and cover that escrow shortage. Now, some lenders will proactively recalculate monthly payments based on projected full taxes if you provide complete documentation upfront during the loan processing. Others may adhere to existing records and wait for actual bills before making any adjustments to your escrow payments. But most home builder lenders will do this the right way by collecting the projected tax amount from day one. So knowing your lender's specific approach before closing prevents financial surprises and is going to allow you proper cash flow planning. And we may need to insist your lender, if it's not the builder's lender, do the tax bill escrow process correctly from the beginning. When we're buying a new construction home, we're supposed to get a property tax disclosure report. And that becomes your primary intelligence source during escrow, because this document is going to reveal all of the special assessments, the current tax rates, the district participation, and the projected changes. Now, most buyers are going to receive this document, but actually never read it carefully, except for my clients who always read documents. But you don't want to let the legal terminology intimidate you into skipping this step. It is really important. So you want to demand explanations for anything that's unclear. You can ask the escrow agent, the builder. You can call directly to the county assessor's office, because these are public records. You have every right to understand them completely. And if you're not getting the right information, I will help escalate this for you. Now, if you really want to get technical, for a Mello-Roos verification, you want to request that specific rate and method of apportionment document for any community facilities districts. So this technical document shows exactly how special taxes are calculated for your property and helps verify any verbal estimates that you've received. And you can also request sample tax bills from the builder for comparable sold properties in the community. And legitimate builders are going to maintain this information and should willingly share actual examples rather than vague estimates. So if a builder refuses to provide specific tax information or seems evasive about Mello-Roos, you consider that a really significant red flag about their transparency on other issues. I have not run into this problem yet. Every builder that I've worked with has been very transparent about property tax projections. And most of the larger regional or national home builders, they're always very transparent and upfront with these disclosures in my own experience. So for planning purposes, we really want to abandon this sort of standard 1% of the purchase price property tax rule for new construction communities. This is a generic calculation. It ignores the special assessments and often underestimates reality by a significant amount. So effective tax rates in new construction communities communities can frequently reach about 1.4. I've seen them as high as 2.1% when you include all these assessments. So for, say, a $650,000 home, you want to budget about $9,000 to maybe $14,000 annually instead of that $6,500 that basic calculations might suggest. So you also want to maintain a dedicated supplemental tax reserve fund on your own, separate from a regular emergency savings fund. So even knowing these bills are coming, you'll need immediate cash available before mortgage companies adjust your monthly payment to fix the escrow gap. So set aside $3,000 to $8,000 depending on your purchase price and closing timing. So higher price homes in spring closings are going to require a larger reserve due to, that double supplemental scenario. So keep that in mind. And you want to plan for that cash flow gap between paying the supplemental bills and receiving those escrow adjustments. And this period can last maybe 2 to 4 months depending on your lender's processing timeline and your payment due dates. So when working with a lender during that loan processing, always provide your lender with complete tax estimates, including those projected supplemental amounts and the Mello-Roos assessments, and demand they calculate monthly escrow payments based on full projected taxes and not the current assessments. Most lenders, if they know what they're doing, will already pre-approve you based on the future estimated property tax costs. And this approach is going to increase your monthly payment from day one, but it eliminates the adjustment shock and cash flow gaps that catch so many buyers off guard. So the initial payment is often easier to manage than these surprise bills and payment increases. And you always want to document these conversations in writing, working through email, loan officer notes. Some lenders, like I said, they're going to sometimes revert to those standard calculation methods during that final processing unless specifically instructed otherwise with written confirmation. So you want to always request pre-closing confirmation of how your escrow account was calculated and what tax information was used. And this will give you the final opportunity to correct any discrepancies before closing. So one last example. I had clients last year, they discovered the ideal beautiful home in the nice Riverside County development priced at about $695,000, but it was built by a smaller local builder. And the builder's sales materials quoted approximately $7,000 in annual property taxes. I've not really seen the builder do this before because it's wrong, but that was a figure that seemed reasonable and manageable. But our investigation revealed a more complex reality, and that was Mello-Roos charges of $3,960 a year for their specific lot and floor plan. And their February closing meant dual supplemental bills that totaled $7,800. So adding to the regular property taxes of $6,950 and their actual first-year tax burden was almost $18,710. So that's $11,710 more than the builder's original estimate and an additional $975 a month that wasn't initially factored into their original budget or loan qualification. But because we identified these costs during contract negotiation, they were able to adjust their down payment, their loan terms, and their monthly budget accordingly. And they purchased their new home with complete financial transparency rather than ending up with an unpleasant surprise later on. Now, for contrast, I had another client who purchased a resale home in an established older Orange County community. They paid $720,000, no Mello-Roos district participation. We actually closed strategically in August and minimal supplemental adjustments due to recent comparable sales. So their total annual tax burden, $7,900, almost exactly what standard calculations had predicted. So look at two different scenarios, similar home values, completely different tax realities that are based on nothing more than location selection, new construction, and timing strategy. So the difference between these scenarios isn't luck, it's important information and strategy that's applied before contract signing rather than discovered after closing. So before signing any new construction contract, obtain written verification of the total projected annual property taxes, including all known supplemental assessments and special district obligations. Confirm those Mello-Roos or CFD participation, annual amounts, and the district expiration timelines for those taxes, and then calculate your monthly payments using realistic tax projections that account for your specific closing timeline. And always coordinate with your lender for more accurate escrow calculations from loan origination based on complete tax information. And you want to establish that supplemental tax reserve fund, which is on you to do, not your lender, before closing, since these bills are going to arrive on their own schedule, whether or not you're financially ready for them. Now, new construction offers some incredible advantages. You have comprehensive warranties, complete customization control over the home, modern efficiency standards, and the satisfaction of first ownership, being the first person to own that home. But smart buyers simply plan for the complete financial picture rather than hoping estimates prove to be accurate. So if you're actively exploring new construction opportunities here in Southern California and want professional guidance navigating these financial complexities, remember, my contact information is below. Contact me directly because I help folks just like you buy new construction homes with confidence. And please share your own new construction tax experiences down here in the comments section, because your own real-world insights are going to help other buyers learn from actual situations and avoid expensive mistakes. Because I want you to remember, informed decisions consistently eliminate expensive surprises. So that's it for this video. I know property taxes are not the most exciting topic, but you've got to know them, you've got to plan for them. And as always, I want all of you to be educated and informed buyers before you go into the new construction community. So thank you for watching, and we will see you on the next video.